approach your spiritual life in a more practical aspect. I know this church does a really, really good job with like equipping you guys with the like the biblical and the doctrinal part of it. But then now, Yenisimo kind of wanted me to talk about how to um, not just understand the things that you're learning, but also to kind of apply it in your life, right? In a little bit, I'll have some people just come up and we're just gonna ask a little bit of like kind of questions because like there's, I just ask people from like they're kind of in different stages of life, so you can kind of see where they're at right now and how they're applying what they know from their spiritual life into actual practice, right? But yeah, so kind of putting what you're learning into practice, and I think like where you guys are at right now, if I can remember when I was a high schooler or even a college student, which wasn't that long ago, I remember it was a really good place to be at because there were a lot of people that were similarly minded. Like all of you guys kind of believe the same things. You guys are all kind of meeting together every week. You guys see each other pretty regularly. But then I think the harder part is once you guys are out of this stage, what happens next, right? Because when you guys move on, when everyone moves out of your parents' houses and you guys go your separate ways, what do you do when you're by yourself, right? Once you leave home, it feels really odd, to be honest. And then there's like that first Sabbath rolls around. Like, are you going to kind of continue on what you've been doing, staying on the focused path, or are you guys kind of just going to do your own thing, right? I recently met up with one of my friends. He was one of my high school buddies, and we were just kind of catching up on life. And he was kind of just telling me what's been going on, kind of filling me in. And he had been through he's been through some stuff, and I'm not trying to like dog on any of my friends that were like my high school buddies, but like most of them didn't stay in the church. They're Christians, but you know we all grew up Adventists, but then they kind of just because they weren't very strongly rooted in the first place. Once they kind of left with where they were, they were like, why should I even hold on to this, anyways, right? Because they themselves didn't really believe in where they were in the beginning. Like we all went to CA, but one of the main he didn't tell me this, but I could see that he had aspirations. He had goals and aspirations that he wanted to accomplish, but that deep purpose for living life, right? And I know it sounds super cliche, but like as Christians, because we're all Christians, right? We're all not trying to define our life by like the successes and accomplishments that we make, but it's how do you become a better Christian? How do you become a better person? And I think over these last years, it hasn't been that long, but it's been like a year and a half maybe where I've been away from home. Something that I've realized is that having a purpose is very, very important. I know that also may sound pretty cliche, but like I had a couple of my classmates, it's a grind to get to medical school, but then because they, for whatever reason, and for some of them, they just didn't have a purpose, right? So once they get to that point and you have to study that much, because they didn't have a purpose, they just dropped out. And it's you got all the way to that point, but because you didn't hash out that purpose within yourself, right? So they dropped out. So that kind of purpose, and also something else that I realized was, we've all made promises to each other, to our friends, and you know yourself that you won't be able to be keeping these promises all the time, right? But the only person, the only entity truly that will fulfill and go through with all the promises is God. There are so many promises in the Bible, Jeremiah 29:11, Proverbs 3:10. If you guys have your Bible, actually, let's turn to Malachi chapter 3, verse 10. This is one of my favorite verses. Or your phone, Malachi 3, verse 10. Pretty sure that's the last book in the Old Testament. Malachi 3:10. Malachi 3:10. Jenna, can you read that? Can you read that real quick?
Bring all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house, and try me now in this, says the Lord of hosts. If I will not open for you the windows of heaven and pour out for you such blessing that there will not be room enough to receive it.
Yeah. So I don't know if you guys heard that, but this verse is essentially saying if you give to God what is God's, and also implicit in the verse, if you are surrendering your life to God, He's almost challenging you. I don't know if you guys saw it, but it says, "Try me now in this." Right? It says, "Try me now in this," says the Lord of hosts. "If I will not open for you the windows of heaven and pour out for you such blessings, that there will not be room enough to receive it." And I think one of the hardest things to do as a Christian is to, when you're reading these promises in this book, right? We're all trying to make sense of it, and we're all trying to believe in what this is saying, right? But there's only two roads you can go down. It's either God's telling the truth, or it's God is a complete liar, right? And I know what the answer is to that question, but do you guys know what the answer is to that question, right? So I would highly encourage you guys to take these promises that you're reading to the bank, not just kind of reading them over and glancing them over, but like this Malachi 3:10 says that if you're trusting in God, He's going to give you so many blessings. He's going to bestow upon you so many blessings that you're basically not even going to be able to recount them, right? And you have to believe that. You have to believe that's real, because it's either that God's telling the truth or God is completely lying, right? And so what I hope you guys can kind of grasp from this panel is that it's not just having that faith. Faith is really important, but then if you go to James 2:26, faith without works is dead, right? We all know that very famous verse, faith without works is dead. And I know a lot of my classmates aren't Adventist back at Loma, and some of them have asked us, they think Adventism is very work-based. We were on the way to a wedding with my roommate, and this girl because she just asked isn't Adventists all they're just all about works, right? You got to work your way into heaven. But that's the exact opposite of what we believe, right? I'm not trying to say that your works is what gets you to heaven, because in Ephesians 3:8, right? It's by grace through faith you're saved. Or is it the other way around? Or by grace through faith? Anyways, yeah. You're not trying to work your way into heaven. You're doing all these, you're living out your life, and you're following the commandments because you love God, and it's not the other way around. You're not trying to get God to love you by following His commandments, right? There's not anything you can do to earn your way into heaven. This is a free gift given to you. It's I really like this analogy that this preacher gave. We've all been on an airplane before, and we've all booked tickets, but in order to actually, in order to get to your destination, you have to still show up to the airport, right? You can have that ticket all you want, but if you don't go to the airport yourself, you'll never reach where you're trying to go, right? And so that's that same thing with the gift of salvation. The whole reason why we're doing this, we're not trying to earn our way. I just wanted to make that clear. But yeah, so hopefully we can kind of, through these questions, I told Nathan, Kaylin, and Isabella, I just shot them some questions, and hopefully through these questions you guys can just learn a little bit more on how to live a practical life, a walk with God, right? So can our panelists please come to the front?
My first year of medical school in Loma.
Hi, I'm Isabella. I'm a junior at Southern right now studying biology, and yeah, I'm pretty good.
Oh, alright. Hi, I'm Stefan. I'm also from this area, and I'm a second year medical student. Alright, so the first question is, and it's just open to anyone, but how do you kind of stoke the flame to your spiritual life now we're all biology something, right? It's really busy. So how do you kind of keep things alive while school's going? And yeah, I can go first. There's a doctor in Loma Linda. He's pretty famous like among the Adventist community because he's like a lay pastor as well. His name's Dr. John Shin. And he was kind of just saying that right now, if you guys are not finding time to hash out what you believe and try to make that real, chances are when you get to where we are now, you're definitely not going to have time. So taking that first step, however awkward it might feel, you might not have talked to God in a very long time, but if you don't take that initiative now, it just gets like harder as you get older, right? Because you get more set in your ways, building habits. So it'd be really nice to start now. Yeah. Anyone else?
I can go next.
Okay.
So for me, I think at some point, especially when I went to graduate school, there was a shift in where I found myself actually enjoying studying my Bible and seeking it as my form of rest. And so I think for me, one of the misconceptions I had was that rest is like sleeping or not doing anything. But I think that shift of a mindset of realizing that studying the Word or choosing to go to like conferences or to go to Bible study, that is my form of rest now. And one of the things, I was trying to pinpoint when I like felt that shift because I was like, I don't really exactly remember what prompted that. But I think what I realized is when I started to choose that for myself, and one of the funny examples that I can kind of think of is like if your mom tells you to wash the dishes, like suddenly you don't want to do it. But if you choose to wash the dishes, you're like doing it because you want to. And so I think that shift in choosing that in my free time to read my Bible or to journal or things like that, or like go to Bible studies, that's when I really noticed that spending time with God became my rest and it became something that I like enjoyed. And so even though my life is much busier now than it was before, I'm finding that time to spend with God.
Alright, for me, I think just kind of going along the lines of Kaylin, definitely like reading your Bible, and for me that kind of started just from seeing people that I looked up to. Like I remember Jared Chung, my freshman year, he gave a presentation. It was like a testimony about how like his dad or his grandpa like wanted him to read the Bible, and then just like kind of seeing that like through his actions and just seeing how cool of a person he was, that's like what kind of prompted me to this thing. So I think just like looking to people that you guys look up to and then seeing like what they do, that's kind of a good way to start. And then like setting a non-negotiable time, like in the morning, to definitely just read the Bible by yourself and then kind of apply that. And then the second point is to, like as Stefan was saying, applying what you learn, because if you don't apply something you learn, then you just lose it. Like if you don't use it, you lose it, right? So that's what's kind of been helping me, even though like I graduated already. I'm like still trying to lead a life group and then like get involved in church. And even though like that kind of seems not really that big of a deal, like the more you kind of apply the stuff you learn, that's like kind of how you stay in the system. So
Yeah, I think for me it's like pretty similar with what Kaylin and Nathan said. Something that I really found to help was to just like kind of like do little things. So for me, like even starting devotionals was kind of tricky, like starting freshman year coming into college. So like freshman year was a little bit rocky with devotionals, but then after that I was kind of like, okay, let's just start with like 5 minutes at least. Let's just read the Bible for 5 minutes. And after that, like it really has like grown, just like doing little things at a time, like not like setting big, goals that are like too big to achieve. Like if you feel like, oh, like an hour is too much right now, just start off with 5 minutes at least to build that habit of starting to do devotional. So I think that really helped me. And also just like finding God in little victories. So like being thankful for everything that happens throughout the day. Like I'll go throughout the day and I'll be like, I don't know, I'll get to a destination safely, or like I did better on a quiz than I expected. I'll just thank God for that and be like, oh, thank you so much for helping me. And along with that, also remembering that God can help you with anything and nothing is too small for him to help you with. So like just anytime I ever had an issue, I would always like ask God for help with it, or like just like think about like his promises or something like that, just to help keep me going throughout the day. And so I feel like even like if you don't have like that much time in a busy day, like even setting aside little things like that could be helpful too, to help keep you in relation with God. And then also another thing, especially I think it started like this year, they started having weekly Bible studies for the collegiate at least, and I think that was very beneficial, for me at least. I really enjoyed having that, so.
Kind of just to add, like you guys are all, we all say that we're Adventists, right? And like if you're deciding on going to Loma Linda, or if you're gonna go to some other school, like chances are, I mean, I've been to like my fair share of churches, and when every one of you guys kind of split off when you get older, like a lot of the time, you may know like a little bit more of like scripture than like other people, and you might be placed in these positions where you have to like do something, you know, you have to like lead out in a Bible study or something, and there are a lot more opportunities like in that aspect. So when you are like paying attention now in Sabbath school, even though it might sound, you know, kind of monotonous and you're like super like bored and whatnot, like it really comes in handy. Like there's a guy, he was dating an Adventist girl, and he's like one of my friends, and he broke up with his girlfriend, and he's not Adventist, but like he just like stayed in the church for a little bit, and like right before he was about to like fade out, but we kind of like snagged him like right before he was about to like just, you know, leave, because like, you know, he has no reason to stay in the church anymore. But then he starts like asking us these rapid fire like questions. It's like all that stuff that I wish I like listened to it on Tuesday Sabbath school. I had to go back and like study it all myself. Like you guys cover like just like super high yield like stuff, like super important stuff that like a lot of people just have never heard of. Like most people cannot explain very like clearly why we don't believe in an eternal hellfire. You know, why do we go to church on Sabbath? Why is it not Sunday? Why do you not eat pork? Like, you're weird. Like, if these kind of things like seem very weird without a biblical explanation, and like this truly is like a sword, because like you have to be ready to not defend, but like you have to be ready to say why you believe what you believe. And like that won't come now, but it'll definitely come when you guys are like our age. You guys are placed in these areas where, I mean, the majority are not reading the Bible, like they're, you know, like how like we are, right? And I'm not trying to like put anyone down, but I'm just saying that that's just kind of how life is, like right, that's like even where I'm at. So okay, the next question is, what would you tell your younger self in high school? Like, what would you change? All right, I'll go first again. I would definitely tell my younger self to like just work on the big three, like spiritual, physical, and mental. Everything else, like, it really doesn't matter. That same friend, I was kind of catching up with him, and like our priorities were so different in high school. Like you guys know, you already know, like what are you guys focusing on in high school? You don't have to answer, but like, yeah, it's like, it's completely, you don't even remember it too. Like I'm sure like the adults, there's no way they remember like what happened in high school. I barely remember like what happened in high school. You guys are not gonna remember what happened in high school. Like, so it's best to just kind of just focus on what's very important. Like, you will thank yourself. You'll thank yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. For me at least, in high school, I mean even now, but I was stressed about things like way too much. So everything I would be like super hyper like fixated on it, or like it would just stress me out to the point where it was low-key unhealthy. So I think I would tell myself like, don't stress so much. And I think along with the fact like why was I stressing out so much was because I was depending on myself too much instead of depending on God. And so I think looking back, I would tell myself, oh, you know, God is like right there. You can give all your stress to Him. Like don't try to figure it out all by yourself, you know. And even like along with God, like you can also ask others to help you too. That like your immediate family, your parents, they're always there for you too. And even your friends, they can give you good advice in some situations. So I think just depending on others, depending on God, I would tell myself like, don't try to do everything yourself. Yeah.
For me, I think the overarching thing that I would go back and change about high school was maybe like complacency. And I think that I could apply that to kind of all aspects of my life at the time, because not just in church, I feel like complacency was kind of what I wish I could change at that time, because I would just go to church, go to like all the meetings faithfully, but I don't remember really like studying the Bible for myself, really having that like hunger to know more. And so I wish I hadn't been so complacent in high school. And then in other aspects of my life as well, high school is when you, like when I look back at high school, I had so much time. Like I would come home from school, take like a 2-hour nap, I wake up and it's like dark outside. And then I was like, what did I do with my day? And so I wish I had been a little bit more ambitious and not just kind of like, just go with the flow. But I wish I would have taken that time to really develop hobbies and to just try, you know, all sorts of new hobbies, extracurriculars and whatnot. And not only that aspect of my life, but also the spiritual aspect.
I agree with what they said. For me, I think I never really started reading the Bible until like college, I think. But I've been in the church for the whole time, and I think a big reason was that I didn't do the things that I didn't want to do. So I didn't read the Bible because I didn't like feel like doing it, and I feel like that's a really common feeling to have. And so I think even if you don't want to, just kind of force yourself to do it. That's like the first step. That's something I really wish I started in like elementary school or like middle school. And then another thing is to definitely take your health seriously, because in high school you feel like you're gonna die like studying for the ACT. Like your Oma says you have to practice and then you have to study. That's like the only things that matter. But definitely your physical mind is like how you communicate to God, right? So if you only just study, you can't really like communicate like openly with God. And that's kind of something I learned, that if you don't like treat your body as a temple and you don't like feed it the right things, you're not gonna efficiently like talk to God as well. And so that's another thing that I learned in like college too. And also definitely like intemperance in one part of your life is going to lead to like intemperance in other things. And that's kind of what I found out through like food and stuff as well. Like, for example, if you have like a whole pizza and then like you ate the whole pizza, now it's like all of your blood is in your stomach and you can't like think straight, and then you just want to like go on Instagram for like 2 hours now, right? Like that happens. Like you just watch anime for like 5 hours and then now you sleep late. And so like that whole cycle is like it's an actual thing. And so definitely like pay attention to like what you eat, and then everything will go well.
Okay, we're halfway there, guys. Hopefully I'm not boring you. So the third question is, what's the hardest part about being a Christian, especially in an area where it's the majority? Yeah, go ahead.
I think for me, the one thing that I realized about my walk with God that kind of made me really sad was, at some point my religion became more of like just like a culture, like how you say, oh, like I celebrate Christmas. I'm in a culture that celebrates Christmas, and so the things that I would do at church or like service and stuff, it's like how people, the way that I would describe it is like, oh yeah, for Christmas we like put up a Christmas tree. You know, it was like very lighthearted. It's just like something you do out of tradition and habit. But then I realized like I'm not really like really deeply thinking about why I'm doing these things, or the deeper like principles I believe that, you know, prompt me to do these things in church. And so when I realized, what was the question? Hold on.
The hardest part about being
Oh, yeah, the hardest part about being a Christian. So I think what led me to get to that point was I became so comfortable around just being, you know, we grow up with like church people, we all kind of do the same things. And sometimes it felt like I was going with the flow and I wasn't choosing that for myself, and it became kind of like a culture of comfort rather than something that I was actively choosing to do. And so I think that can sometimes be like, what's the word? A challenge in our, like being surrounded by like-minded people. It's a beauty that we're all like-minded and we believe the same thing, but at the same time you have to know why you're believing that and doing those things. That's what.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think probably the biggest like challenge I think of when it's like what is it? The hardest part about being a Christian when you're in an area that is majority of them are Christian is getting too comfortable. And so my freshman year in college, I was actually in this program called SALT, and where they would it was basically like Bible worker training kind of. So the whole first semester they like taught us all the skills of how to give Bible studies, go door to door, things like that. And I think one thing I really take away from that is how much that program kind of pushes you to go outside of your comfort zone. And I realized with that, like with pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, you not only get like more opportunities to witness to other people, but it also strengthens your faith as well. Because I realized like having to explain like certain concepts from the Bible, just like Stephen was saying, like you have to like know why you believe that. Like what like you can't just explain something and not even like know what you're explaining or why you're explaining that, right? So having that experience to like push yourself out of the comfort zone and like witness to other people kind of strengthens your faith, and then also it gives you an opportunity to share God with others. So I think really like being in SALT, and then actually even coming out of that, like even now I realize like myself, like I've gone back to being like too comfortable, you know. I haven't had that much of an opportunity where I would actively like seek out things like that, and that's probably on my fault as well. But just like being in that situation where you're like kind of just going with the flow of life, going like Caitlin was saying, like the tradition of just like going to Sabbath, going to like doing your Sabbath duties and things like that, it can get pretty like repetitive, and with that like you get comfortable. And so I think that's probably like that is definitely a challenge of just being like constantly surrounded with Christians.
At Loma, like the Korean church over there, I'm just on like the youth board, I guess, like for like the youth group, and they wanted to have an event on Saturday, just, you know, like a kind of like a youth get together where you guys remember like how you guys did the Iron Chef stuff. You guys remember that kind of like a cooking competition? But they wanted one of those, and it was like broad daylight, and they said that they want the people that are participating to just go to the grocery store and like buy all the ingredients there, like that day. And I mean, this is more of a personal conviction of mine. Like after I read like Nehemiah 13, when Nehemiah like he's in an uproar when people are buying and selling on the Sabbath. That this was more just a personal conviction, but like I was expecting all my friends to be like, yeah, that's a bad idea. Let's not do that. But then everyone was kind of just like not even saying anything, and like I felt very, very like awkward at that point. I just felt very weird at that point, and like I kind of like really sheepishly was like, can we like do something else, basically? And just my point from that is, like even the pastor, like he didn't even say anything. I was like, what the? But it's harder to like speak up when everyone else is believing in very similar things, because you know, like they're like, oh, this guy's too conservative. Like you're thinking like they're all judging me or something. I found that it's even harder to like speak up on these very gray line things that are more like personal conviction. You make the choice yourself. When like each and every one of you guys are very similar in belief. So that's just something that I've learned like in my time out there in Loma. But yeah, anyone else wanted to add anything before we move on? Okay.
Oh, wait, I can add to that because I can actually see that happening even like at Southern, which is really sad because like you know, you expect you're going to an Adventist college, right? You think everyone has the same beliefs as you, but they don't have the same beliefs as you, and so you're kind of stuck in this situation where you're like, you know, you want to like show them what's, or like at least like, you know, that might be a personal conviction for you, but it might not be the same for them. But it's like, how do you share that to them without being like judgmental? Because you're supposed to believe the same thing, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's really difficult. It puts you in a really awkward situation, especially with friends when they're like, oh, let's, like I have friends that are like, oh, let's go eat out, or like, but for me, like that's just personally, I wouldn't want to do that, you know? And so I don't know, it definitely is difficult. I think it's even harder because like we are all Adventists as well.
Yeah. And then when you're like, if you're at Loma, like at the medical school there's a lot of my classmates that they're not Adventists, and they're not even, some of them aren't even Christian. And then
How they get in?
I don't know. They're spiritual, but not religious or like something like that, like something along that lines. Like some people's, yeah. Anyways, oh yeah, okay. They see like they'll see one of our boys, and he's like an Adventist, so they see him at like a party, and they're like, well, it's like, well, so what do you guys really like believe, you know? So there's Paul talks about like teachers are held to a lot higher of a standard. So if you're gonna claim that you believe everything in this book, you have to really go the full nine, because people that aren't Christian, or maybe they're just, you know, non-denominational, we're claiming that we front to back, right? This whole thing, we take it holistically. So if you're not doing that, like myself included, then it might actually be worse for those people than if like you didn't believe at all, right? Because of, like a false teacher would be way worse than just like not a teacher at all, right? Yeah. Are you guys good with that question? Okay. Okay, so next question is, why is it so important to start your day in communication with God?
For me, I personally have found that I like to have my devotions first thing in the morning, just because I feel like it really primes your mind for the rest of the day. And the days that I have kept to that, which is, you know, not always every day, but the days that I have like committed to doing that and making it the first part of my day, I feel like the things that would faze me normally, I'm able to go about it with a more calm mind and just have more peace throughout my day. Especially if I have like a quiz that day or like an exam, I just feel more calm in my mind and heart when I, you know, spend that first waking moment with God before like checking my phone or, I don't know, studying or something. And so, yeah, I think it primes my mind. And for me, actually, there's this like concept of, if you're given like a list to memorize, you tend to remember the first thing on the list and the last thing at the list. So for me, like, yes, I like doing it in the morning, but I think the best combo for me is when even if it's for a short time, to have it in the morning, and then right before I go to bed also to kind of dwell on, you know, scripture or something. I think that's the best. Yeah, and one verse that I found that kind of, I think, is pertinent to the point I'm trying to make is found in 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. And it says, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind." And so I think for me too, especially in grad school, I have a lot of fear, and sometimes I get anxious about like Friday morning, quiz day, or exam day. And so this verse is particularly powerful to me because it kind of reminds me that, oh, I don't need to fear. I know that God will give me power and a sound mind.
Yeah, for me,
Okay, I got it. Okay.
for me, I think if I don't do it in the morning and then I kind of just lay it off the rest of the day, and something comes up, I probably won't do the devotion, so I just get it done within the morning. But I remember Miss Eunice was always saying that, like, the Bible is, you said it was a sword, and then like you wouldn't go into the day without like preparing yourself against like anything like the devil throws at you. And so like we're living in amidst like a great controversy, and then like you just wake up and then study, like you won't be able to do anything like resist the devil, or just like do your best in the day if you don't start with God. And so it's kind of like, as Kaylin was saying, it's like God's priming your day, and you're kind of dedicating that whole day to Him if you start with Him.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like you guys are obviously all face like hiccups in your day, but in my experience as well, like starting your day with devotions, you might not even remember what you did in the morning, but once you come to that, like someone just really makes you mad, like there's like that very split second where it's just, it's like that super cliche saying like, what would Jesus do, or like I need to pray or something. That like will not happen if you did not do devotions in the morning. So if you do devotions in the morning, those knee-jerk reactions turn into something like the Holy Spirit is really channeling your conscience, because you started off your day talking to the person that supplies that voice, that little voice in your head that is telling you to like just pray for like a split second, right? So yeah, that's one of the reasons why I think that's very important to stay in communication with God. And like there's like other things too that I've put off, like I'm gonna review like last month's material, and then like I just don't get to do it because I didn't do it earlier on. Like things start to pile up in your day, I'm sure even for you guys. Yeah. Anything else? Okay. So this next question is, how important is your friend group when it comes to your relationship with God?
Okay, I have something to share. During my gap year, I was lucky enough to go to Korea to study Korean for a semester there, and it just kind of ties in with the hardest part of being a Christian, even in a majority like that. But I was at Samyuk University, and it's an Adventist school, but majority of students there are like not even Christian at all. And so the friend group that I hung out with like every day, I was the only Adventist, let alone Christian. And it was really interesting actually, because I saw the beauty in being friends with like people who aren't Christian, because it opens up the air for just a lot of discussion, because they were very curious about what I believed in. In Korea, the drinking culture is very, very like prominent. And Friday night would come and I'd be like, okay, bye. They'd be like, going to Hongdae. And then they would get like curious. And so it's kind of ironic, because I've had more conversations about what I believe in Korea with these friends than what I've had like growing up with like people from school, or even in Loma Linda sometimes. And so how important is it? I think, Jesus calls us to be a friend to all, to love all, and so I think everyone can be your friend, but at the same time, like, there's a difference between, like, being a friend to all versus being, like, a people pleaser to all, and so I don't think you need to compromise your beliefs because of your friends, but I do believe that you should be, like, a friend to all, and I think that if I hadn't gone out of my comfort zone to be friends with some of these people, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to show them how I live my life, and I even took like a couple of my friends to Korean church one time there, and it was like really, like it was really a beautiful thing for me to experience, to share that with them and to see how they were curious about that. And so,
You guys, you had any of your teachers say like they want you to make a list of like all the things you want in your future spouse? Have they had you guys do that yet? Any of your teachers? And they're like, you need to do something. No? Alright, well. The point I was trying to to make is just that if you want to like have better friends like you yourself, it needs to start with you, right? It can't be like you know, like that verse that says like you can't be pointing out the little twig in your brother's eye when you got a log in your eye.
What?
Type of thing. Huh? You haven't heard that before? I'll pull it up.
Twig in your brother's eye, log in your ear. No.
That's like don't point out the speck in someone else's eye when you have like a log in your eye.
It's Matthew 7:3.
Oh.
I'll just read it. Why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye, but do not consider the plank in your own eye? So, I mean, it's not a log, it's a plank. But yeah, that was like the same kind of concept. If you're trying to make good friends, like it needs to start with you, right? You yourself need to be a good person as well. You guys tired? You guys are kind of tired. Alright, so this is the last question. At this point in your life, like, what are you noticing that's distracting you from God? For me, it's definitely school. I never felt this in high school or college, but like the sun is setting, and I'm like, I need to literally get through so much more stuff. And like, I've never felt that temptation ever in high school or college. But the sun sets, and something you have to know yourself is, you know, like the 10 Commandments is like a basic Christian principle, and if you're going to say you're Christian, like the Sabbath has to be a non-negotiable for you guys. And I've seen how God has blessed my family by keeping the Sabbath, and I also want to make the Sabbath a non-negotiable for me right now. So that's something that I've been noticing that has really been distracting me. Or like even checking like my email like in the morning, like to just see like what assignments have come out, like that completely throws off my devotions. Yeah, school for me.
I can say school as well. I'm pretty sure, at least for anybody who's like studying right now, or like seriously studying to college, like even in high school for you guys, you're probably thinking about school a lot too. So I think school is a big thing. I think friends can also be distracting sometimes, like we were talking about. I mean, just like going back to like who you spend time with, I think definitely like reflects like there's that saying where it's like, oh, you will become like who you spend the most time with. So like that can also reflect that. And you know, if you hang around with people who are like distracting you or like doing stuff that you may not do normally, like that can also take away from God as well. And I think for me at least, something, and some other, maybe the adults here might also relate to, but also just like church involvement can also get in the way sometimes. If you're too heavily involved with some things, you also have to kind of step back and reanalyze and be like, oh, like, you know, am I still spending as much time as I am with God, or am I mainly just like working for Him in a different way? So I think that's something to think about.
For me, I think what distracted me from spending time with God.
Yep.
What distracted me from spending time with God is when God is not my priority, I would get distracted by other things, and I'd get like greedy. So I'd be like, I need to be the best in my class. I need to study harder. So school, I'd be greedy for like success in school, or like social like greed, I guess. Like I would want to go do fun things with people out in like LA or something. I don't know. But those kinds of distractions, I think, took my mind away from prioritizing God. And I think right now, especially the most kind of prominent one is also like school and just like success in career life and stuff. And there's a Bible verse that my dad used to always say to us when we were growing up during family worship. It's in Mark 8, verse 36. And it says, "For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul?" And so this has been a verse that has come back to my mind time after time. And I think it's a good reminder to me to not lose myself in the world. All the distractions, because there's so many.
Yeah, I think those are all like really prominent. For me, I think it's not more of like a, I guess it is a time issue too, but I think just having faith in God, like that He's gonna do what He says He's gonna do, and I guess just like Christianity in general, like the process of sanctification and just like being a better person. I think that's like sometimes it's like really difficult to see it like happening, and so I think just like having faith in like God's like power, and then yeah, I think just one more Bible verse. I think it's like Ezekiel 36:26-27. He says that He's gonna like give you like faith and like a new heart to like change. And so like in all the things that we've said, such as like devotions or just trying to like be more godlike, like we just have to have faith in Him first, because like through our own power we won't be able to do anything. So I think it's just really good to put in the picture that just know that God's gonna do like what He says He's gonna do for you.
Alright guys, I just want to leave you guys with this verse, Proverbs 3:5-10. This is like one of my grandpa's like favorite verse. It says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, He shall direct your paths. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and depart from evil. It will be health to your flesh and strength to your bones. Honor the Lord with your possessions and with the first fruits of all your increase, so your barns will be filled with plenty and your vats will overflow with new wine." Right? Especially verse 5, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, He will direct your path." Like, that's another promise for us to claim. And again, it's either God is who He says He is, or He's completely lying, right? And so, in the other verse in Malachi, it said, "Try me in this," right? So it's almost a challenge. So I encourage you guys to claim these promises as if they're going to really come true, right? And also, I hope you guys can just get from this that everything here is like meaningless unless you have some sort of personal working relationship with God. If you don't have that, then you can't unlock any of like the possibilities in your life, right? Because you don't have a relationship with God. So I would suggest, if you guys haven't talked to God in a while, like it would be just great to start now, because now would be the best time. All right. All right. Can you pray anything?
Dear God, thank you for this Sabbath, and thank you that Stephen could give a meaningful worship, and please help us to apply the things that we have learned today, and continue to be with our academic, but more importantly, our spiritual lives, and please help us to witness for you so that we can use what we've learned to help others. In your name we pray, amen.
You know, I have a question before you guys close. Do you guys have like a little short testimony that you can give about how God has worked in your life? Or is there something that you experienced, maybe through trouble or whatever, like an experience that you had that really strengthened your faith or showed you about God? You know, if you want to just say something quickly. Yeah, Kaylin, do you look like you're
yeah.
talking?
Yeah, I think for me, I had some troubles definitely with academics, especially toward the end of undergrad, and like getting just the MCAT, getting into med school, even first year, it's been pretty rough. And I think I joke around with people because some people have been telling me like, "Oh, you seem like calm, like you're still smiling, like you must be doing well." And I keep telling people like, "Oh, I'm like happy, but I'm not doing that well." But I think what really helped me to be at peace with just whatever happens in like my academics or career and stuff is with all the setbacks that I did have, like I cannot say that God wasn't leading me, because when I had to retake the MCAT, I thought like, oh, this is horrible. I don't get to go in with my friends. I want to be with my class and stuff. But God led me to Korea, where I met some kids in like this childcare facility, and that was like a life-changing experience for me. I'm so grateful that I got to experience that. And then even with being in a different class, not the one that I originally had wanted to be with, I feel like God has really led me to make some very good friendships with people, and just the timing, everything was perfect now that I look back. And so I think that's why I think I have had lots of discussions with my mom, because one of my exams in med school too, I just like failed, like downright bombed that test, like really bad. And so I looked at my grade, because it comes out Friday night, and I was like, oh yeah, I can like rest on the Sabbath. But I was in bed crying because I was so sad. And I think I had a really long talk with my mom, and that's why like having mentors, not just your parents, but mentors in the church is really helpful. They can help you get on the right track. But basically, after much thought and looking back on the history of my life and everything, I have come to a point where like I feel like whatever happens to me, it's a lesson, and like at the end of the day, God will work it out. And so I feel like that's how I'm able to go about difficult things like med school with a little more peace. And so for you guys to, it's easier said than done. I still struggle with it. I still get stressed on testing. But I think because of how I've seen God lead me in the past years, now I have a little more peace about the future.
There's been weeks where like I just can't cover all the material, and like some people like I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna do like an insane devotion, because like I don't know, like I want to study like really bad, and there definitely is a balance of like, I'm not saying I'm trying to do like the insanest devotion to get like a really good score, but like sometimes like you just can't cover stuff. And there were like, I have weeks in mind that like I just didn't cover what I was supposed to cover, and then like I get like a 6 out of like 12 on the quiz, and then like they're like, we're gonna actually drop like 3 questions, and then I end up getting like a 11 out of 12. Like it's just like, it's like those exact weeks. And I'm not promising you that that's gonna happen to you, but like that stuff happens. Like, and it just happens to be on the day that I like did like a literal, got lost in like the Bible trying to like figure stuff out, and like it's like 2 hours have passed. It just like happens like that. Like I can't explain it because I'm not God, but like God says He's gonna bless you, and you better believe He's gonna bless you. Thank you. All right, peace.